So we had an Arcsys employee that basically did an interview. He was talking about how difficult it actually is to incorporate rollback into a game that's already been created. And he basically quoted, in layman's terms, it's not just as simple as just, drag and dropping GGPO into a file and then it's just like, oh, the game's got rollback. It's great to hear somebody finally saying something more in detail about like why it's difficult, because for a lot of times you would hear companies like Capcom and Tekken try to talk about it and they just say something simple like, oh well, it already got rollback. Oh well, we can't do that. So it's good to finally hear somebody saying more of just like, hey, it's more difficult than y'all think it is. We basically have to break down the foundation of the game, like start the game over to incorporate this GGPO or rollback. What do you guys think about, him finally coming out and saying this and letting people know it's actually difficult to do this stuff, and you guys are so hard on us about incorporating it?
Well, I mean, I think first off, I think it's kind of a relief to have somebody come out and actually say something about it. Instead of people being kind of ambiguous about whether or not it's like, well, I don't know, or it's already got rollback. I think it's important for somebody to come and say, hey, listen, it's not as easy as you think it is. This is a big process. Like you said, it's something that is very labor intensive to put in rollback into a game that's pretty much already done. Like, for instance, I think it was yesterday, might have been yesterday or the day before, that they just announced that they were going to release what I think it was like Guilty Gear X2, Accent Core plus R with rollback like a couple days ago, and that game came out like years ago. Like that game's pretty old, and they just announced that like a couple days ago, if not yesterday. So it takes a while, I think, for some games. It's like, I'm not going to say that it's every game, but I would feel that it would be a case by case basis. Like there's not a one size fits all kind of solution for adding rollback to fighting games. So I mean, even though we want rollback in all of these games, I mean, it's important that that it's not that simple. It's not going to be that simple. Like you say, oh, well, they should put rollback in this game. Well, I mean, if you're willing to wait that long, I mean, cool. But otherwise, I mean, you're just going to have to work with what you got. And I mean, let's be honest, rollback has its problems on its own. Like if you've ever played a game like, let's say, like Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, when they did the online edition last generation, you're doing a move, you might come in, do a jump in attack, and you hit somebody in the face, and the game is like, nah, I don't think so. And then you rewind. It's like, basically you're playing the game and you're fighting an enemy stand in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. You like kick it, no man, nah, you definitely did not do that. It's so now we're back to neutral, go again. So it's not to say that that's like necessarily a problem, but if it happens several times, it becomes less of a relief and more of a really giant annoyance. So, I mean, rollback isn't exactly perfect. It's more, I guess it would be more ideal, but it's not perfect either. So, I mean, like you got to take the good with the bad. But yeah, I'd say that I'm just glad that he went out of his way to actually tell people, hey, it's not that easy, guys. So just cool off.
What's funny, as we're talking about this on my phone, I got a YouTube notification from Dead Ace on YouTube, the Street Fighter videos, and it says video entitled "Is Netcode Fixed?" I'm like, well, that's exactly what we're talking about. I think when it comes to, after I read the part where he was talking about like you have to break the game down, I think I think what could be a solution is just like having the forefront thought of let's incorporate rollback from the get-go. So that way that'll probably be easier instead of being like, okay, well, let's do this. I don't know how, difficult it is in comparison to like rollback to other forms of like the netcode, but I think just like starting from that from the ground up is the way you do it. Cause like you were talking about with a game that's already done, now you just said, you can't just drag and drop. Okay, now I'm gonna put a rollback netcode band-aid on top of this. It's like, it's not gonna work like that. So for older games, incorporating it, obviously you have to break it down. Like with Guilty Gear, it's an older game, so I don't know how hard it is to incorporate that in something that's like not as graphically intensive and just in its core base is not as hard to develop as games nowadays. But I think just starting from the base, okay, we're going to incorporate rollback netcode. That's how you maybe saw the solution. And also to Evan's point, like I remember playing 3S Online when it came out, and like those times when you like nothing infuriates me more when you hit somebody and you see the hit sparks, the punch, and it's like life bars like no, I didn't see that. The game's like I heard you hit him, but I didn't see it though. And I'm just like, okay, all right, and it just keeps going on, and he's like, you know what? Hey, look, I'm done with this. And I mean, it's been like such a big thing with like the talk of netcode and stuff, rollback, all these different things. I think for me, the best online that I played in a fighting game might be Skullgirls. I want to say Skullgirls. I didn't really have a lot of issues with the online with that game. And I think when it came out, a lot of people were praising it, like, "Hey man, we can get that online that Skullgirls has, man. We be doing good." And I think the worst for me is probably Street Fighter 5, yeah, because the online in Street Fighter 5 makes me want to jump out my window and then come back and then jump out again. But yeah, I think that starting from the ground up, that's a good way to rectify stuff. So I think going forward, fighting game developers have to be like, okay, so they have to take a good amount of time to really sit down and say, okay, how are we going to deal with the netcode? Okay, it's a big part of fighting games, like online play, especially like now with the coronavirus out, everybody's at home. You need some decent internet and a decent netcode to have your players be able to, play properly. But yeah, like I think you just got to start at the base and start from there.
I really have to go back to the Street Fighter 5 comment because I fought like a 10 frame Ken the other day, and it's always Ken, right? It's always like a Ken.
It's always Ken.
And I'm like, dude, like I know you didn't hit me with that DP, but you've been doing this to like a ton of people, and I don't know how you get away with this garbage. But to go back to kind of to reiterate some points from some of the guys, I think it really says something of Arcsys actually. The fact that, because I think you're right, Devin. I think that they are doing this kind of from the ground up. In that, I bet they've been listening for years. Like we're hearing about Strive this year, but that means that they've been listening for the past couple of years to then be developing and working on GGPO rollback for the last several years, right? In order to build up this game. So I think it says something to their credit that they actually have been listening. And to me, like, I think that's really cool to hear from a publisher and a developer standpoint. From Evan's standpoint about like, which I think really comes down to about stability. And I kind of want to touch on this as kind of like a lot of it, right, is you can just rip something out and then put something back in and expect it to be stable the way that you would like a car necessarily, right? Like, so I do a little bit of development and a little bit of design work. And if you can't essentially, like, you can't be like, hey, we're just going to take out this entire system that the game is built on and totally just replace this other system. Like, if the game is built on that, you need to expect a ton of problems. So if they were to suddenly just like trade pieces out like that, I personally think that, like, yes, of course I want rollback. Yes, I think rollback leads to like a lot better like matches, a lot better ranked system, which I think really helps games. But like, I think from what I know as a like a developer light and as like a designer light, if you change things in a system like that, yeah, like you're gonna expect instability. And it's like, what do players want more? Like, do you want the rollback or do you want the stability? And it's like, we could put the rollback in, but now all of your games are going to be unstable for the next 3 years until like you know what I mean? So better to just start over with a new game, a new franchise, and then build the rollback into it, like Devin was saying. My really last point is I just think it's really great that Strive is actually, and I think it really speaks to them that they like are like, yeah, we have to build a new system for this, and we've been listening for the past couple of years, and now you're hearing about what we've been listening to, not just recently, but for the past couple of years. I think people are like, oh, they're finally listening. It's like, no, they've been listening, because had they not been listening, rollback wouldn't be in this already, because that means they've been listening for like the past year, the past 2 years. So, and I think that's really cool for them. So
I want to say something real quick to what John just said. I think Ken actually is an acronym for crappy Ethernet nonsense. That's probably why every time you play Ken,
that is so
the connection is bad.
And Ken playing spell crappy with a K because they just don't know better.
Yep. What Ken's crappy Ethernet nonsense. There you go. That's it. That's it.